just knowing that alone, no doctors are going to tell you that.
Welcome to the Doctors Mentor Show. If you believe that medicine is an industry and not a profession, if you enjoy submitting complex reimbursement claims, or you would do another residency just for fun, be advised, you're about to be offended. You should probably leave now.
All this talk about mentoring doctors is ridiculous. I thought doctors learned to do everything better than everyone else the first year of medical school. At least that's the way they act.
If you love assisting patients with vitality breakthroughs, if the right to practice medicine without interference is important, and you want expert tips for practice freedom and profits to support your epic life, welcome aboard and prepare to be blown away. The Doctors Mentor Show starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Lori Barr.
Hey, it's Dr. Lori Barr here. I'm so excited today because we have a very special guest. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew you might perish and there was really no one there who could save you? You know, where you actually thought that the only person who would really save your life was yourself? That's exactly what happened to my guest, Mr. Dave Vogt. No, he wasn't out hiking in Western Canada and got his arm pinned under a rock and had to saw it off or anything. He was not attacked by a bear and left to die. Actually, what happened to Dave is something that easily could happen to you or I. And you know what? I'm so happy that he is here to share that experience with us. Can you guess what that death threat came from and what he had to do to overcome it to save his own life? Dave, I'm so excited that you're here and to have you sharing your experience with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So my guest today is Mr. Dave Vogt. He's a serial entrepreneur who's crossed many business paths in his career. He cut his teeth in the automotive industry as the owner of Dave's Pit Stop, an auto repair shop in small town Welland, Ontario. This is where he met Stephanie Schaefer in 2003 when Dave helped Steph find a car, and the two of them had been inseparable ever since. By 2004, Dave and Steph took on their first house flipping work. It was crazy hours. Right?
Yeah, well, it was nuts.
I mean, did you really know what you were getting into?
No, I was working at the shop and doing that at the same time. So.
Oh my goodness, 2 feet and two different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always interesting. So you learned a lot of new skills, right? And you're having a lot of fun.
Oh, it was amazing.
Deeply in love with your life partner.
Oh, it's amazing.
And you know, there's nothing like that feeling. Now both Dave and Steph have transitioned to full-time realtors in the Niagara region of Ontario. Talk about beautiful.
Yeah.
Ontario, Canada, Niagara Falls. And, you know, they get to work together every day as the Dave and Steph real estate team. And they take their house flipping experience, marketing skills, and investing experience to their clients as two of Niagara's trusted real estate advisors. Now, Dave and I are mastermind partners. And, you know, when we last got together to assist each other, and that's actually what we're doing right now, in scaling our businesses to the next level, he agreed to share some insights about what happened to him that has really assisted him since he had his death threat. So I am going to have Dave tell you about his death threat right now.
Yeah, in 2016, I was diagnosed with lung cancer right around my birthday. It was a wonderful birthday present. Went in and got an x-ray done and found out that I had stage 3 lung cancer.
So what caused you to get the x-ray?
My mom had a stroke probably about 8 months prior to my diagnosis. And shortly after that, I got sick with a chest cold that did not go away. And after about 2 months of fighting it, I finally kicked it. But I still continued to have a wheezing that never went away. And Steph kept bugging me to go to the doctor. And I'm like, I don't like doctors. I don't want to go. And she's like, you need to go get it checked out. So I went and got a chest x-ray done. And that was where we found the tumors in my lower third of my lung on the right side.
All right.
Yeah.
So a mass was found on a chest x-ray.
Yes.
I mean, and you know, that right there, I mean, it's just a life-changing experience. It's almost unbelievable.
It's crazy. Like, I was like, me being who I am, I'm kind of take life by the horns, right? I'm like, I looked at the doc, I'm like, okay, so what do we do about this? And then I looked over at Steph and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is a big deal. I was like, this is going to be a challenge, right? Like it took a bit to sink in, but when it did, it's like, oh man, right? So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. So after you got over the shock and disbelief of being diagnosed with cancer at a young age, at what point did you start to realize that you needed a stronger personal advocate if you were going to thrive as you traveled with your disease?
Well, I'd always been health conscious with everything in my life. In my late or early 30s, actually, I was a very good, very physically active. I was actually in the gym every day. You know, like I was probably the front cover of Men's Health Fitness magazine because I was like completely like in good shape and I felt amazing, right? But 15 years of working, burning the candle at both ends, it just kind of went downwards. But I kept studying and researching stuff then, even for my diet. And even as a young kid, my mom actually put me on a very clean diet to help with my hyperactivity. And diet has always been a big part of my life. So I knew that I needed to do something with my diet immediately. But also I had been researching because of my mom's stroke about cardiovascular disease. I had read the China study, all of these books that said that diet could radically change your health. And so for my mom suffering with a stroke, I was like, we need to just absolutely go out there and kill it, like get rid of the blockages and everything. I could do it with food. So I was already had her on a whole food plant-based diet, and I was kind of transitioning towards that way. So once I got the diagnosis, I was already researching. So I already knew that there was other opportunities out there. And in my research with heart disease came in cancer, and every one of those when it came to health and wellness. So I just absolutely jumped on that bandwagon, knowing full well that there was good ways that we could work with this disease.
So let me get this straight here now. Not only were you dealing with your own illness, but even before that, your family was health conscious.
Yes.
Even from a young age.
Yeah.
And your mother then has this stroke. What were her deficits after her stroke?
We got really fortunate. My mother's a very bright woman. The only thing that she really suffered was some minor mobility issues, and her brightness wasn't there anymore.
Well, it might have been there. She couldn't.
Yeah, it was just really,
anymore.
she was still communicative and everything. What happened with her, she had a bunch of tiny mini strokes over a course of a couple of days, and that led to her going into the hospital and then figuring out that she had a 75% blockage on her carotid on one side, 100% on the other. So all the blood was going over the top of the back of her head. And I was like, okay, how do we get these unblocked? And reading Dr. Esselstyn's book about heart disease and that made me realize that you can completely reverse heart disease just with a whole food plant-based diet. It was amazing when I read it. I remember reading it, and I remember the study, and I think there was like 30 people that he brought into the study who were basically written off conventional medicine. And he pushed the envelope of what was then the norm for a doctor to do. And he literally was kind of pushed out of, I think it was at Boston University Hospital, he was actually pushed out because he was doing things that they didn't agree with because it totally went against the grain of the conventional medicine. It's crazy.
So you put her on this whole food, plant-based diet in the process of assisting her.
Yeah.
And moms, if you have a great relationship with your mom, that's such a strong bond. Absolutely. So you already had all this love energy happening in order to assist her with her health challenge. And then along the way, you're also getting information that helps you.
It did, yes.
That's great. And there had to be some point where you started to realize that you actually knew more than your medical team that was assisting you, at least around nutrition.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
What did that feel like? What did you?
It was frustrating, actually, because they never ever discussed nutrition. When I first got diagnosed, they told me that I wasn't a candidate for radiation and chemotherapy in the beginning and that I couldn't do surgery. And not that I would have done either one of them, knowing my knowledge at that point about cancer and the people who have survived cancer. Cancer's been in my family going back. My grandfather had lung cancer. He suffered greatly, going through radiation and chemo. And I remember as, I think, a 12 or 14-year-old kid, him saying, if you get a diagnosis of lung cancer, don't do the radiation and the chemo because it's hell. Like, he spent a year in the hospital. I mean, we've come a long way with technologies. Radiation is much more targeted now. The chemotherapies that they have are so much better. But at the end of the day, they're still very toxic to your system and your body. And there are a few exceptions. I wouldn't tell anybody to say no altogether. It depends very greatly on your situation. Every type of cancer is different. And that's a big part of what I tell people when I'm speaking to them about this is that, yes, diet is exponentially beneficial to your health, whether you're a sufferer of cancer or otherwise. Just in general, lifestyle is eating good is important, but let food be thy medicine is such a big thing. And to watch my mom like go through all of that. And actually she was diabetic. She's no longer diabetic. She lost weight. She feels amazing. Most stroke patients usually stroke out again within a year. She's going on 3 years now, almost 4 years now, completely stroke free. So the diet is a big part of it. And I was frustrated with the doctors because they just said straight out, eat whatever you want. Really? You're not going to tell me to cut out sugar or anything? They're like, no. So yeah, even going into the hospital today, when I go into the oncology department, first of all, I'm usually the happiest guy there, you know, but they're going around with their carts and they have volunteers giving out soda pops and they're giving out Ensure, which it's the go-to nutritional support. And Steph reminded me coming here today that when we were actually sitting in the doctor's room and talking to the doctor when I first got diagnosed, he was talking about how radiation and chemotherapy, like chemotherapy in particular, was helping this girl with leukemia, that she was in a bad spot right now because they had to put her on IV to feed her. And I looked at him and I'm like, that's all full of sugar. You're going to kill her. And the doctor looked at me like, maybe this guy's a little different than the usual patient. So.
And was that really your biggest surprise or shock that doctors had no knowledge of nutrition, or was there some other larger shock?
I don't think I was shocked just because I had dealt with my mom and speaking to the people for the stroke and the stroke side of things, like trying to talk to them about, oh, she's got 100% blocks and 75 on the other side. Oh, we could probably try a whole food plant-based diet and we could soften all of that arterial plaque up and eventually probably break that loose without causing a stroke again. And they looked at me all in disbelief, like, what are you talking? Like, that doesn't work. And I just looked at the doctor and I'm like, whatever. And I just had to walk away. And even trying to get in to see a picture of her scan to see what her head looked like, see where the issues were in her brain, I wanted to know. I'm I have to know, I have to see it, I have to understand it kind of guy. And I think if anybody out there gets that diagnosis, don't believe everything the doctors tell you. It's like, go out there and do your own research, figure out for your particular type of disease, whatever it is, whether it's heart disease, cancer, it doesn't matter. You're your own best advocate. You got to go out there and fight for yourself. You got to educate yourself so that you can go forward and absolutely use the doctors for everything they have, because there are some amazing things out there. I will not argue with that at all. But unfortunately, when it comes to cancer and heart disease, they don't look at like cancer. They look at it as a genetic disease, and that's not right. It is a metabolic disease first and foremost. Yes, is there genetics involved? Sure there is. I have an ALK positive mutation I'm a very rare, less than 1% lung cancer patient. I have 5 targeted therapies that are all created by doctors and these pharmaceutical companies. And thank goodness I do, because they're helping, right? And it wasn't until I finally had a transition of it up into my head, which we can go into that, but that was a weird thing that happened to me. I was keeping my disease under control for the first year and a half, almost 2 years, without any progression of the disease, just with diet and diet alone. And the doctors kept telling me, and the first they came back and said, you are a good candidate for radiation and chemo. You're young and you're healthy. They had the big powwow with all the doctors. And I remember saying to the doctors, I'm like, are you guys all crazy? Like, seriously, you want me to do radiation and chemotherapy and you want to do aggressive? I said, the efficacy of that treatment for lung cancer of any kind is only about 5%. So you want me to be your guinea pig and you want me to try radiation and chemo because I'm young and healthy? And I'm like, yeah. I said, when there's targeted medication out there. So I was kind of annoyed with, I was actually, to be honest with you, I was angry. And I try not to now. I try to be a ray of positive hope and whatever, but there's times where you just want to like reach out and strangle them because you're like, you don't get it. You don't understand. There's so much that you're missing out. Like, you've gone to school for this. You've educated yourself. Like, you need to educate yourself on nutrition too. And that's when I discovered that most doctors only have about 12 hours of training on nutrition, which, if that, I feel like
when I was in medical school, I didn't get any nutrition training.
It's crazy. And that to me is wrong. I mean, that needs to change. But because the training for doctors is based on the pharmaceutical industry, that's where the problem comes in. And the money and everything that comes into that is the biggest driver of that, which is a huge problem.
Yes.
If we took the money out of the equation, we just want to make people healthy, I can guarantee they would be using nutrition, nutraceuticals, non-invasive treatments and stuff that are very, very effective to treat many diseases, not just cancer, many diseases. The one doctor I had put me on the wrong drug to start out with, didn't cross the blood-brain barrier, and by then I had already had cancer transition to my brain. And it took 9 months of me being on that drug before I went, wait a minute, why am I getting worse instead of better? And then when I started back on the computer again, trying to figure this out, I'm like, you put me on crizotinib, it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. What the heck? What is wrong with you? I was angry. I'm still angry about it. I try not to project that anger, but there's a little part of me that wants to go sit down with somebody and say, hey, this is what this guy did. I think it's medical malpractice. Seriously, I can teach a 5-year-old that if I give you a drug that doesn't go into your brain and it's supposed to go into your brain to fix the problem that's in your brain, there's a problem there, right? And the 5-year-old would go, yes. So I was the one that actually told my doctors the drug that I wanted to be on. So I ended up switching oncologists halfway in between this. Right when I found out that he put me on the wrong drug, I went in to talk to him. He had semi-retired, so I had to go talk to a new oncologist, which was like, I was angry. Put me on another drug and lots of issues with. There's so many side effects with most of these drugs, which is the other thing. So if you're eating healthy and clean and taking care of your body, it does help. There's been studies that prove that just fasting 2 days prior to going into your chemotherapeutic treatment will actually increase the efficacy, I think, by 50%, and it will reduce the side effects by 50%. So just knowing that alone, no doctors are going to tell you that. Doctors are starting to realize that there's a connection between the two of these. So one of the ladies that I follow, Nasha Winters, cancer is a metabolic disease, literally went and sat with the people at Sloan Kettering and decided that they wanted her to speak. So she went in and spoke to a group of oncologists about the metabolic treatment of cancer and eating in a metabolic way, and basically the ketogenic diet, which is it's a big craze right now for health and fitness and losing weight. Well, yeah, it does help you lose weight, but it also does a lot into your body, and cancer is at a cellular level. The reason why our cells divide incorrectly is because we've mistreated our body, and on a mitochondrial level, things start getting all messed up. Yeah, and it breaks down, right? Cancer cells break down sugar incorrectly. They ferment it and they cause acidic buildup in our body and everything, and they divide very rapidly. But if you take the sugar supply away from it, not all cancers thrive on sugar. There are a few rare ones that don't, that basically will grow no matter what you do to them. But they're very rare, but the majority of cancers all thrive on sugar. So if you remove the sugar from their diet and go into a ketogenic state where you're using ketones, the burning of fat, they can't survive. And I've done intermittent fasting, I've done long water fasts, that those two things have actually, I went 8 months for a period where I had no change in my lung tumor at all. And every scan came back, no change. And then shortly after that, I decided I was going to do a water fast. So I started with a 4-day fast. Then I was like, it's hard to do. And, you're starting to break down fat. You're getting all sorts of toxins from the fat get released in your system. Your electrolytes go off. There's a bunch of things that happen, right? So if you're going to do something like that, definitely research the heck out of it, because if you just jump in and try it, you're going to be like, oh, why did I do this, right?
And think about joining a advocacy group. There's a bunch of fasting groups on Facebook that are awesome.
Tons, yes, tons. I mean, there's some really good people out there that are really doing some amazing things with this stuff. And so I did that, and I went on to do a 7-day, I think, after that, and then I did a couple of 4 or 3 days, and I went back for my scan 2 months later, and I had a relatively major change in my lung tumors, which, I went on this drug that I'm on now that I basically went in and told the doctors, this is the drug I want to be on, this is where you can get it, this is the person I talked to, please get it for me. And a week later, I was on the drug. So if I didn't do all of that, I would have never been on that drug. And I should have been on that drug in the first place.
And when you say a major change, are you talking about a major decrease?
Major decrease and calcification of the tumor, of the mass.
Showing that.
Yeah. So this drug is really helping with my head because it's got a huge concentration in the brain. So I had over 25 small little tumors in my brain. And some of those were obviously pushing on spots, causing me to have trouble walking. And even Steph said, like, you see me, I talk a lot, but she said, for a year, you weren't talking to me. And I was like, really? I didn't think I was that bad. She goes, no, you sat around and watched television and movies all the time. And I was like, oh yeah, I did. Like Christmas last year, I was watching Christmas movies, like 2-3 a day. I don't watch Christmas movies. I wasn't really a Christmas guy. I am now. Honestly, I am now. It's so funny because mindset, right? You're like, hey, friends, family, life, love, all that, it matters. So, you have to focus on what matters. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question about the fasting, because, often when people fast, they go into a different state of contemplation, similar to meditation, but even deeper. And I'm just wondering if that gave you an opportunity to introduce a little forgiveness for people in your life who may have made mistakes, like that doctor, for example, so that you could not hold on to that negative energy that might slow down your progress here, because you're doing such a fantastic job.
Yeah, I would say I don't think I'm angry at him anymore. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I think he needs to learn a valuable life lesson. I think that a lot of people, if they saw some of the things that I've been able to do with my body, as doctors would be like, wow, that's amazing. Like, maybe I should look at this stuff. And if I was to take him to court of law to challenge him on his obvious mistake, I wouldn't even want any monetary value out of it. I would want just to ensure that that doctor knows and that other doctors know that that wasn't the right path to take, that there are other opportunities out there, that it's important to take the time with your patients to understand their disease, to be careful in what you're doing. Those people are trusting you to, like, they're giving their life to you. You know, as a doctor, that's a huge responsibility. And yet so many doctors are like tunnel vision. I just need to do this thing. And they just know what they know. And they never take the time to educate themselves otherwise. And unless the only way that we're going to see change happen in the oncological world, in the medical world, is if people take a stand, speak up.
I would like to point out to the audience here just some really unique things about you that I think have assisted you in your success. One thing is, what I noticed right away when you started telling me about your story is that you don't closely associate the cancer with you.
Yeah.
You were talking about earlier how important it was for you to see a picture and to know what you were dealing with.
Yeah.
But you know, most people don't have the self-confidence to keep themselves separate from their disease when they see that picture.
Yeah, it's
I
hard.
call that a mental tattoo, because once you see that in your body, it's like, oh my goodness, like I am that.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience of practicing medicine all these years, the cancer thrivers, and by that I mean the people who have had a journey with cancer
Yeah.
and have had amazing lives for the whole rest of their life, are the ones who are able to say, cancer is a disease that is walking with me, I'm living with, but it's not them. They're not cancer.
Yeah.
And that's so important to be able to build up your self-confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I also noticed that you've obviously forgiven yourself for the years that you didn't treat your body so well.
I know what I did. It's my fault.
So do you hear that? He's taking full responsibility for his entire existence.
Yep.
And that's what also gives him the courage to stand up and direct his medical care. I am a huge advocate of everyone becoming the chairman of the board
100%.
of their medical care team.
Yeah.
And you are a great example of how you actually do that and do it effectively. Now, what was the reaction when you told your doctor, hey, this is the drug, here's who to talk to, I'm going to be on this drug with or without you, is basically what you said. Not exactly, but kind of.
Well, the first doctor, the one that put me on crizotinib, the one he kept pushing for, it was kind of a scary moment. And crizotinib that he was trying to put me on, why would I go on it if I was continually getting better with a whole food plant-based diet? It didn't make sense for me to expose my body to toxins. It was a chemotherapeutic drug. It does do things to your body. There was a lot of nasty side effects. Well, when it went to my head, I'm like, okay, doc, I need to go on the drug but he didn't tell me at the time that it didn't cross the blood-brain barrier, right? And I didn't do the research because I was a little bit overwhelmed at the time. Had I been in my right mind at the time and not thinking like, oh, kind of in a little bit of a panic mode, I probably went, doc, no, that's crizotinib, doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, give your head a shake, you know. So him pushing me all the time and me getting better with my whole food plant-based diet and some nutraceuticals and stuff like that, I was like, absolutely not. Why would I put it in my body? And he's like, well, you know, it will help. And I'm like, okay, how much? Well, you know, you are getting a little better, but you seem to have the disease at a standstill. And I'm like, yeah. I said, do you think I really need it? He's like, well, I'm going to suggest it to you. It's my obligation as a doctor to suggest it to you. I said, well, it's my obligation as your patient to say, no, thank you. And he was kind of like giggled about it a little bit, but you could tell he was mad at me, right? And he's like, well, they made me put my list of nutraceuticals together. And here's my suggestion. If you're going to see a doctor and you got a list of nutraceuticals and they ask you what you're on, do your own research, figure out if some of those interact with the drug that you're going to be on, if you are going to go on a drug. But what you need to do, and it's like our next level business, you need to pick the top 3 things that are really going to help you get to where you want to be. And if you want to get well, there are some key things: nutraceuticals, diet, nutrition, exercise. Those are huge. And researching the heck out of stuff. Because if you're doing those 3 things, then you can go in confidently to your doctor, to your medical care practitioner and say, listen, this is what I've learned. Let's bounce some ideas off here. When it comes to nutrition, you're not going to get any idea bouncing. you're just going to get the cold blank stare. I would research and look at PubMed documents. And like, I got pretty good at speaking to doctors in doctor terms, right? And they would, and I remember when I sat down with the oncologist the first time, and he said, he was trying to dumb down stuff and like make it simple. And I looked at him, I said, just give me the straight up goods, doc. Talk to me like another doctor. Like, just cut to the chase. Tell me what you're thinking. If there's something I don't understand, I will tell you. I said, let's just talk to me at a high level, please. That's the way I work. And he was just like, oh, okay. He didn't know what to say. I'm like, yeah, like I got it. Like, you need to do what you need to do. I need to do what I do, but let's get to the cut to the chase here. Like,
so an important component here for doctors and other healthcare professionals who are listening is it's really important to understand the best way to communicate with your patient.
Yes.
And don't assume that every patient comes in at the same level, no matter what their field of study is initially.
yes.
I mean, auto mechanic, maybe he thought he had to dumb it down. Realtor, maybe he thought he had to dumb it down. But had he known your mother and your history with diet affecting your life and improving it, it might have been a different conversation. What is the one big mistake that you would not want anybody else who has a cancer diagnosis to make?
Don't just agree with everything the doctor says. Do your research before you agree to any procedure.
One big mistake, and I think you've already covered this, but let's get it out there clearly and plainly. If there was one big mistake that your healthcare team or your doctor made that you would never want any other doctor to make, what would that be?
Well, in my case specifically, it would be the giving me the wrong drug.
So not realizing that the drug they were prescribing that looked good on the surface was not right for you as an individual?
Yeah, I think that doctors need to take a little bit more time and really focus on the patient, because everybody's an individual, right? Chemotherapy is a pretty broad spectrum treatment. I mean, let's face it. I mean, there are probably a dozen different chemotherapeutic treatments out there, but a lot of them are very broad spectrum. And unfortunately, they kind of label somebody, you got cancer, you need chemotherapy and radiation. It's like, it's go-to. And I just think there's so many more things they could be doing, right?
Possibility there that's untapped.
Absolutely. There's a huge opportunity there that's untapped. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. So for everybody out there in medicine, we've got work to do still, and changing our system, being open to all ways we can strengthen a person's mind, body, spirit, and awareness is super important here. And what is the one big thing you want everyone facing a health challenge to take away from your experience?
Go out there and take care of yourself. Like, seriously, just start for everybody, start taking care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself so that you can be better for other people, not just for yourself, but for everybody. Like, if you don't look after your body, if you don't take care of your own self, how can you become a better person? Like, if you're constantly struggling with health issues because you completely ignore that, you just go and live life haphazardly with no care in the world, unfortunately, you're probably going to come into the same situation where I did. You know, like, I spent 15 years not looking after my body. I got overweight. I got out of shape. I started eating incorrectly. And then next thing out, it's really huge. And stress is a big one. So eliminate stress, eat clean and healthy, exercise every day. I mean, we've all heard it, but just do it. And go out there and just be happy. If somebody's having a crap day, you know, you go up to the Tim Hortons or to the coffee place and the person's in a bad mood, and just smile at them. You know, like, be that person in the room that lifts everybody else up. You don't do that. Like, it doesn't help you any to be like miserable and grumpy every day, because that's not going to get you anywhere in life, right?
And that may be what contributed to getting you in the situation you're in.
It's true. It's true. You have a choice in life. You have a choice to be miserable and unhappy, or you can choose to be happy. I don't think it's something, happiness isn't going to come up and grab you by the shoulder and say, come on with me. You know, you have to go out there and create that happiness. So whether it's your business, your life, whatever, even for your family and your partner, like, encourage them to be better people every day. And I if anything, like, I know that my little ray of hope when I come into the oncology center actually perks up a few people's days for a few days on ends. And I've had people actually thank me because they're having a crap day. And I go in, I'm like, hey, you know, how's it going? And sometimes I'll come into the front desk girl at the office. I was like, you look like you could use a hug. And I'll give her a hug. And hugs are amazing, right? So just go out there and be that person that does that. So, yeah.
So, if you're out there and you're already facing a health challenge, your action item and what you need to do right away is to take these tips to heart. Are you doing everything you possibly can to take care of your own mind, body, spirit, and awareness? Are you assembling a medical care team that you direct your care, not someone else that you think you can trust? And are you doing the research to help yourself survive and thrive? And if you're out there and you're a medical professional, or if you're out there and you're someone who hasn't faced a health challenge like this, your additional action items are to start thinking about the own team you'd like to take care of you, because we're all going to face some health challenge before the end of the day.
Yeah.
And let's really think about communication. Let's think about how little it costs to find out what really matters to people and to give them that little gift of love, hope, and a hug.
Yep.
Love you so much for sharing this message. You're amazing. I really, really thank you for this.
Thank you.
Your next step.
Epilogue. I interviewed Mr. David Donald Vogt on February 24, 2019. David passed on November 2, 2020, over 4.5 years after his initial diagnosis of stage 3 lung cancer. This is only part of our interview. David had some great suggestions for individuals facing a health challenge that I've published in Series 2, Episode 1 of the podcast, Think and Grow Well. Ready to improve communication with your patients or clients? Consider our 8-week Think and Grow Well implementation program. Look for the link in the show notes. This program helps individuals strengthen mind, body, spirit, and awareness before a health challenge strikes. If you'd like to learn more about adding this resource to your practice, contact me at Lori@thedoctorsmentor.com.
You're listening to The Doctor's Mentor, hosted by Dr. Lori Lee Barr. Podcast content is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purposes of curing, diagnosing, preventing, or treating any disease or medical condition. Information found or received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare, legal, or accounting professional. If you suspect you have a medical problem or you should have any healthcare questions, please promptly call or see your healthcare provider. Carefully read all labels and heed all directions and cautions that accompany products or services. Before using any strategies, activities, or products referenced in this podcast, consult with your lawyer, accountant, or medical professional. The Doctor's Mentor was created by Dr. Lori Lee Barr. It is owned by Peak Idea, LLC, executive producer, Dr. Stephen Dent, audio-video engineer, Richard Dent. The company, Dr. Lori Lee Barr, and the producers disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about the qualifications or credibility of guests. Opinions of Dr. Lori Lee Barr are her own. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements from products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services mentioned. Remember, one idea is all it takes to change your world.
Are you stopping at a hospital? Hello? Don't you know that hospitals are one of the sickest places on the planet? Don't touch anything in there and get out as fast as you can.
There's more to explore at thedoctorsmentor.com.